I mean, I think they heard all the outside noise about South Carolina not having a chance. I think Tennessee's players bought in to South Carolina not having a chance because that talk was coming from both sides. It was real easy to buy into, and it was the one time this year that I think they let that outside noise creep in and affect them. And hopefully the leadership on this team, the coaches, the players that will still be here next year will learn from that. And I think you saw the way they responded against Vanderbilt, that they can learn from that, that that's not who they are. Because we saw this in 2016 with Butch Jones. We saw them lose a game in Columbia that they should not have lost. And they still, I mean, I think they beat Missouri after that game and then lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, they were never right after that South Carolina game. They weren't able to correct it. Butch wasn't able to correct it. It carried over into the next season as well. You saw Heupel immediately change the tone. He changed that whole perception. That storyline of the broken locker room that Kirk Herbstreit and everybody was trying to push out there, it kind of disappeared immediately after that Vanderbilt game because of the way they responded. And that's what gives me confidence moving into next season, that one, that won't be an issue, and two, that South Carolina game was kind of an anomaly.
To me, this season proved a couple of things about Josh Heupel. If he can get two things on with a team, it's the magic formula for him. One is a great quarterback, and he's clearly pretty good at producing great quarterbacks. He's done it multiple times in his career, this season just being the latest example. Almost had a Heisman guy as his QB this year. And then if you could combine that with a solid defense, and this season, like John Hill says it in the comments here, our defense had holes in it all year. Absolutely. That defense was never destined for anything great.
They had a couple of moments, the Kentucky game, the Vandy game, even Pittsburgh to some extent. I mean, the defense was huge in that game, but they weren't consistent at all, and they weren't able to string it together.
Yeah, I mean, but just if he can have if Heupel can have his offense operating at the high end of its ability, 45 points a game like this season, or plus, I mean, it was more than that this season.
Number one in the country.
Exactly. If you can have that, and then you combine that with a solid defense, again, it doesn't even have to be great, but you have maybe a great edge rusher and a couple of good cornerbacks.
The 2015 Vols defense.
Yes.
This team would have, I don't know if they beat Georgia because that's a toss-up game. At your best, that should be a toss-up game. So you just got to go out and beat them. But they beat South Carolina. Yeah, they're in the playoff with the 2015 Tennessee defense.
Absolutely. They would have been in the playoff this season with a defense that good. And it's not like that defense was anything transcendent. Like, it wasn't.
Yeah, it's what you're talking about. They had good players. They had Derek Barnett, edge rusher. You had Cam Sutton and Jalen Reeves-Maybin, and these guys that didn't go to the NFL to become superstars, but they went on to have NFL careers and to be contributors. You got to have those guys to get to the playoff. You're not going to get to a playoff with a defense that doesn't have a bunch of NFL guys. I mean, they got it. The LSU defense in 2019 is a good example. That defense wasn't elite by any means. And Dave Aranda, that was the defensive coordinator that year, is the head coach at Baylor now, had a good reputation. They had guys go to the NFL. Grant Delpit, Patrick Queen, and the edge rusher they had several guys, but they weren't elite by any means. But with that offense, there was no stopping them.
I mean, that's why I look at this recruiting class and you go Shandavian Bradley, Christian Conyer, Jordan Matthews, these dudes that are coming in, and then you add in transfers on top of that, whoever it may be, and you give that formula 2 years, and Nico's your quarterback, and that's what's coming up. I mean, I just look at that and I go, that's it right there. There's your, transcendent offense with solid defense. And that's the formula that Heupel can get to the playoff with. I mean, clearly he proved this season that it's possible to get to the playoff with this, in my opinion, because I think with a half decent defensive effort in that game, you beat South Carolina and make the playoff. So, you were that close, a half a football away. So, fall is in the air, and that means fall grilling with cookouts, tailgate parties, and so much more. Luckily, the flavor experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to savor all the flavors of fall with their mouthwatering assortments of perfectly aged steaks, ultra juicy burgers, and easy-to-prepare comfort meals that are ready in a flash. And now is the perfect time to load up on all this incredible flavor and take advantage of 50% off site-wide by shopping their friends and family sale. Go to omahasteaks.com and use my promo code VOLS, that is VOLS, at checkout and get $30 off your order. And guys, I've said it in these ads for weeks now. I've had all of the stuff from Omaha Steaks. I can't endorse it enough. Everything has been high quality. It comes right to your door, so easy and convenient, and I mean, most importantly, tasty. So I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. So don't wait. Go to omahasteaks.com and stock up today. Omaha Steaks isn't just steak. It's the best steak of your life, guaranteed. And don't forget to score that extra $30 off your order when you use VOLS at checkout, VOLS. Omaha Steaks is perfect for those chilly and busy fall nights. You won't come close to getting this kind of quality at the grocery store. Visit omahasteaks.com. Promo code VOLS at checkout. Minimum order may be required. Omaha Steaks. That's kind of a side point, to go back. We were talking about the transfers. I think with transfers this year, that's the only way Tennessee can get to that point that we're talking about there. There are, Lord knows, with all the transfers that are out there right now, the players are certainly there. The young talent that's coming in, like your Shandavian Bradleys and your Christian Conyers, I don't think they're going to be there yet. But you have great young people, Josh Josephs, and guys like that. Like, you have great young pieces coming up, but I think you probably need transfer linebacker, definitely some transfer cornerbacks, and maybe a transfer quarterback this season. We're going to see. It's kind of a tryout for Joe Milton. We talked to Jonathan Crompton this last week about that. He thinks Tennessee should go for a transfer quarterback no matter what. And that was a little controversial in the comments and on social media. Not everybody agreed with that, but and I think, the wide receivers are going to be fine. The running backs are going to be fine almost no matter what. But you get those positions filled out. It's going to be there for Tennessee this coming year too. But can they do that? And the transfer portal is going to be a huge piece in that. And I don't know. Everything's so up in the air, as we're already saying. Everything's so up in the air with the transfer portal right now. Who knows who all they've talked to? Because there's not enough hours in the day to talk to all the guys in the transfer portal right now. There's just
I imagine that's what every single grad assistant and analyst is doing right now.
Yes.
They're just watching 18 hours of film a day.
Living on the phone.
Yes, living on the phone, watching these dudes on film, trying to figure out who's who. Because I do think that, some people think Tennessee will take a step back in 2023 because you're losing Hendon Hooker. You're probably losing Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, some of these guys that were key players. And I definitely see that. I'm not ready to put a projection on anything. I would like to see Joe Milton in this Clemson game before I really get into thinking about what might happen next year. But I do see, you're losing a Heisman contender. Maybe you need the defense to step up a little more next year. Maybe you don't beat Alabama in a 52-49 shootout next year. You beat Alabama in a 35-28 type game where you're able to keep them off the scoreboard a little and you don't score quite as much. Like, I think that the defense will have to play a little bit better because Joe Milton just doesn't have the track record of Hendon Hooker. You can't count on 48 points a game next season. I still think the offense is going to be dynamic no matter what. Even if Joe Milton is still inconsistent and is the starter, I still think you're going to be scoring 40 points a game and putting up some numbers because we've seen he can hit those splash plays. He can hit those 60-yard bombs, and Squirrel White and him already have shown that they have a connection with each other. They've shown it at the end of several SEC games. So I think that'll still be there. I just think you're going to need the defense to step up more next year than you did this year because I could see that. Like that Pittsburgh game this year where the defense kind of sealed the game. Flowers made that sack, and he made a key interception in that game as well early in the game when Pittsburgh was possibly going to go up 17-0. I think you'll see more of those type of games next season, just based off what I think they'll have going into next year. Obviously, like I said, we'll know more after the bowl game and how that goes.
Yeah, there's a lot that has to play out. And actually, Daniel in the comments here, he says, I think this is part of what's happening with the transfer portal. He says, who are we getting as offensive coordinator? Obviously, an offensive coordinator hasn't been hired, although in my personal opinion, I think the offensive coordinator for next season is already in the building. I think it'll be,
I think so too.
Yeah, Joey
And,
Halsey.
and I think if that wasn't the case, you would see that they probably would have already made a hire, or they'd be closer to
Yes.
making a hire. I mean, you haven't heard them talking about to anybody about that job. And if he was going to go outside of the building to make that hire, I think we would start hearing some whispers about certain people and certain coaches. So I don't. Obviously, he's going to have to hire a tight ends coach and
Yeah.
hire
But
somebody that can
does
develop
that
and recruit.
affect if they want to try for like a Trey Knox? Does that hurt you?
I think it does. I mean, I think it could for sure because Trey Knox entered the portal when his tight ends coach left. So obviously,
Yep.
to me, that I mean, I don't know for sure if this is the case, but that tells me that that's important to him. And if that's important to him, it's hard to commit to a program that doesn't have a tight ends coach, and you don't know who's going to coach you.
You really don't, and so that does feel pretty imperative, pretty important.
But you're not going to go hire a tight ends coach just to get Trey Knox.
That's true.
Time. You know, you still got to hire the right guy. And we've seen this program hire the wrong guy before. We were talking about before we started recording when Jimmy Brumbaugh was hired, and he was fired after 4 games because Pruitt didn't really interview anybody. He just hired a guy he knew. So, and I get it with Pruitt too. Like we've kind of talked about how challenging this month of the year is. It's tough to go and find the right guy and all this stuff. It's so much that goes into hiring a coach. Yeah, Pruitt could have done better, but it was what it was. So Heupel doesn't probably not going to make that same mistake. It doesn't appear that he is. So I think it's more about get the right guy. Don't hire a guy just because you think Trey Knox will commit if you do.